And we're live. Welcome to the RG DFS Tournament Takes podcast. I am your host, Chris Kirkwood, Kirk D's, here with an old colleague who I've been doing this show every year with, Brett Hartfiel, Killer B2482. Great to have you back. Excited about it. And then the new king of this podcast is going to be toe tagging Tambo, Tyler Tamboline. I believe you're Canada's #1 DFS player. I'm going to say that for sure, but
we'll go with it. I don't think so, but let's do it.
Tax-free winnings, though. That's nice.
Yes, it is.
But what's going on, fellas? We're here to talk Week 1 NFL. How you guys doing?
Awesome, man. Kind of been, waiting for this week, like for quite a while. Didn't know if it was going to happen. Obviously, we've all been probably doing our own little quarantine and kind of sick of this whole process. But now that we got sports, my focus has been a lot on NBA, baseball. So luckily, I guess I got sucked into a little bit of best ball this past week. So got all my NFL info as much as I could get, at least with the setup with no preseason in this past week. But yeah, I don't know what your situation is, Tambo, but I know you're more in those PGA streets, but how are you feeling with NFL?
Yeah, I'm feeling good, man. It's good to be back. I appreciate you guys having me on here. It's going to be a fun pod to do this year with you. Taking over from my boy JSU, so he's doing just fine. But I heard everyone that comes on this podcast starts scooping up six-figure scores left and right. So I'm looking forward to that this year. Maybe that will propel me to being Canada's #1 DFS player. But I appreciate the nice intro. I've been grinding out, man, same as you, in a bit of quarantine mode in the PGA streets. Like you said, that's sort of a difference maker this year where we've got the crossover of PGA happening at the same time as this. So like I'm, doing week 1 stuff here and then prepping for the US Open, a major in golf next week. So it's a lot going on, but excited to be here. And I think this podcast, I listened to it a lot in the past. You guys are great. Happy to be on here with you and excited to talk some of the slate and some of these guys and sort of how you guys build your lineups and get unique with them.
Yeah, and pour a little liquor out for our boy JSU. But you're going to fill into those. Actually, big shoes to fill, I would say, normally. But in his case, he's probably like a size 8 or a size 9.
Just a short joke right away. Come on. Jeez. Now that he leaves.
So you'll slide in quite comfortably. All right, so here we are. We're back to talk football. Yes, I was made to quarantine, so that's not a problem for me. It's been a crazy year, no doubt about it. It's a crazy day today, too. September 11th recording brings back all the feels. I'll never forget where I was. Quick little story. We lost a close family friend. My sister was living in New York City at the time, and one of her good friends was a flight attendant on the flight out of Boston.
Oh, wow.
And it was her day off. She was covering for somebody else, and it was just craziness to get the news. And so I'll never forget that day. But it just makes you think, it's just been such a crazy year in general, everything going on. It's nice to have some football back in our lives, right?
Yeah.
So Brett, tell the people why it's so nice to have our football back in our lives.
Yeah. There's 100 million reasons why you should listen up. So DraftKings, obviously you guys know, the leader in one-day fantasy sports, is celebrating the return of sports by giving away $100 million in prizes to all their customers, including one lucky winner who will take home $1 million. Pretty easy to claim your share of the $100 million in instant giveaways. All you have to do is download the app, sign up using the promo code DFF, then enter DraftKings for the free football survivor pool. Yes, it's really that easy to claim your share of up to $100 million in instant giveaways and put yourself in the running with a $1 million cash prize. While the top prize is reserved for one lucky winner, everyone who signs up and enters DraftKings free football survivor pool will receive an instant bonus prize of at least $5 in value upon entry. While you're in the app, don't forget to check out all the great daily fantasy contests DraftKings is hosting for this week's basketball and golf action. Call to action. Download the DraftKings app now and use promo code DFF to claim your share of $100 million in instant giveaways and put yourself in the running for $1 million cash prize, top prize. That's promo code DFF to get your share of $100 million in prizes. Only at DraftKings. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. All right, now that we got that over the way, let's dive into week one, boys. This is what we're here for.
They're gonna be joining Tambo on that Millionaire Maker. I know Tambo plays that a lot. So this is going to be a work in progress as we go. Like you said, there's just too much sports going on. I'm getting my feet wet back into NFL. It was great to have the game last night. I'm getting excited about the slate. I'm starting to enter like crazy. So I want to win. And Tambo, I'm going to promise you're a six-figure score by the end of the season for you yourself, because that's just what happens here. It's going to happen. I promise you that. All right, so we got 12 games, some nice totals, just big picture overview. What stands out to you just before we get going in? We're going to go position by position, talk about our favorite plays at running back, QB, wide receiver, tight end, throw in some stacks that the three of us like. We'll probably debate a couple of things here and there, but big picture overview of the slate. What stands out to you, Tambo?
Yeah, it's always the same thing, I think, in week one. A couple of things that I'll make note of quick. One is the groupthink, right? So I know we're on here to talk about tournament takes. We're going to have some ideas. We're going to use, I've got lineup HQ up in front of me with some of the projected ownership that's already out there right now that we can look off of and sort of make some picks against, or how do we leverage certain spots, positions, and guys. You can almost see what a cash game build looks like already if you've done any research this week, because pieces are just falling into place, right? And so you got to look at ways to leverage that, especially in week one. There's a lot of opportunity there. A lot of your quote unquote guys that you're about, this is the time to play them, right? Time to get a little bit different. The other thing that stands out is, we talked about it, the quarantine, coming off it, no preseason. It's completely different than what we're used to or what we've seen in the past. And with that said, I think there's going to be a lot more mixing it up, right? We saw it last night in the Thursday night football game. There was a mix of some running backs in there and changing it up. Obviously, Duke Johnson got injured. That changed it for the Houston side when they were down and needed to come back. But they were still mixing up some of the receivers, all that. They're going to be resting guys a little bit more. So I just think that's something to be leery of as you go throughout the week. And don't just play all the chalk, right? We're looking to take down these tournaments. Like you said, the Millionaire Maker with the $5 one this week has like 1 million people in it. So you're going to have to be different in certain places. And we're going to talk about that on today's pod.
Yep. Thing that stands out to me is uncertainty, right? Like week one is always uncertainty, but now it's like absolutely magnified with all of this, what's been going on without the preseason. I mean, we don't have the preseason info. And I am with you. I expect running backs usage to be light in comparison to what we are used to. So I think like trying to find the true bell cow is gonna be very important. Yeah, man. So there's just a lot that we don't really know. How you feeling, Brett?
Yeah, I mean, like right now we're diving into a lot of coach speak, right? Or, just hearing like what teams possibly are going to be doing. But we don't really know. We haven't seen a lot of action. We're trusting a lot of beat writers, hearing some things out of coaches possibly saying they're going to not give a guy a full work share, or at least, slowly bring him in. I think looking at this main slate, there's not one game that really sticks out from the Vegas point of view. Looking at just points wise, the Seattle at Atlanta game is at 49, right? And then the Jets at Buffalo is 39.5. So we don't have a line or a over under that's over 50. So I think you're gonna really have to rely more on ownership numbers this week than I would on normal weeks. And, don't like be in love with like projections this week, because projections, I think you can just throw out. Look more at ownership side. I would way rather this week go with a lower owned guy that's projected very similar than a guy that's going to be 4 times more owned for sure this week.
Yeah, that's definitely a good take. So let's just at least, nothing stands out to you from a Vegas total standpoint, but let's at least just touch on the big picture overview from the implied total that are on here. We've got the highest on the slate is the Falcons Seahawks. Is that correct? 49 point total. Then we got the Cardinals game, San Fran, and everyone thinks, the San Fran defense is so legit, and they are legit, but this is should be a even more high-powered offense coming into its own in the Arizona, who actually put up a ton of points against them last season when they played. I know Kenyon Drake went off. Baltimore Ravens, Lamar, that's always a key decision point in the slate, whether we want Lamar, how much Lamar we want to do, because he's going to be chalk. We know in best balls, like people just love clicking Lamar, right? Same thing with DraftKings. Everyone wants that rushing upside. And then we got some sneakier games that, should have the capability of completely popping off, which would be Oakland, Carolina with a 47.5 point total. Then you got the new high-powered Tom Brady, rest in peace, New England fans like me, offense playing New Orleans. So that's another big one. And then just some other games that, maybe we'll have some plays, but nothing really to focus on. But let's start it off the QB position, or no, running back position. Sorry, last year we always did QB, but let's do running back since that's kind of the foundation. I know that we aren't going to be able to trust all these workloads and whether these, we're probably going to see a lot of running back by committees just to get people, in shape, in tune with the offense, plus less risk of injury without the full preseason. So like, the typical workhorses may not be we may not be able to count on for such huge usage, but we do have Christian McCaffrey right at the top, and I think we can count on usage for him. Plus, all reports out of Carolina and the coaching staff have, after practicing and everything, have said that they're not going to scroll back any of his usage this season, and they're going to even probably look to get him even more involved in the passing game than he is with lining him up on wide receiver sets and stuff. So he's going to kind of be like that. Remember when Le'Veon Bell was the top receiver and the top running back? We may get that situation unfold at some points in times this season. So McCaffrey, what are your guys' thoughts with him right off the bat? I mean, obviously we don't have to tell people he's awesome. Like everyone knows it, but how are you guys approaching from DFS? Tambo?
Yeah, I'm going to be overweight. I think it's a spot, and that's why we're starting with running back this year. Like you mentioned for the pod, it's kind of this sort of dictates where you go. It's an area where you can be a little less contrarian, in my opinion. There's still going to be contrarian plays, and I'll get to some when we go through it. But I think with a guy like him, you talk about just how many carries, catches that you just mentioned he can get. Joe Brady being there now, a guy that can really spark him up, said it in any of his, talking back to where Brett was going with coach speak, saying that, I don't think he actually had too many carries or too many touches. I think that was fine, and we could even do the same or ramp it up. So then you got Teddy B there now, check down king. I think, if whether they're up, down, doesn't really matter. He's going to be involved in the game. He's out there all the time. So running back's a spot I'm not afraid to go with some of the chalk, and he'd be the best chalk in my opinion. And right now he's showing it like 25% ownership. I really don't think that's crazy. You could actually argue that might not even be enough. So I'm definitely going to be in on CMC, and then I'll look to use them more in a secondary correlation spot than just, setting up Derek Carr the other way. We'll segue into quarterbacks and whatnot later, but I'd really like him. And then we'll get to some of the receivers for Las Vegas a little bit after this.
I would say right now I kind of want to be under the ownership. It's tough for me to stomach a 10K guy in week one because currently I think I'm paying that price mainly for what he did last year, right? And obviously this is a totally new situation, which is probably a good overall situation for Carolina, right? New head coach, Matt Rule, offense coordinator, like Tambo just said, of Joe Brady coming over from LSU, and then Teddy Bridgewater. I just don't know how much of Christian McCaffrey that I want when I see like a Delvin Cook at 7.9. Again, like this is just a spot where McCaffrey is the first guy I'm putting in my cash games, but tournament-wise, I feel like I can get guys that are going to be 2 to 2.5K cheaper with similar amount of touches and just hoping that they break also like a big game. And I can use a lot of that money towards my wide receivers, which I think the stud wide receivers are going to be lower owned this week. So,
you don't see that nice 45.9 DraftKings total he had week one last season. Doesn't scare you at all?
That's going to happen again in week one.
It might. So the thing here that stands out to me is the fact that we know what we're getting with him. You know, he basically has barely ever – we can count on him for at least 20 fantasy points, you know, basically, and then he has monster upside. Also, the facing the Raiders, who ranked 20th in DVOA last season versus the run, plus they're younger now, and you know, their defense is going to be trying to, I don't know how to put this best, but they're going to be young and inexperienced, so it's going to probably be tough sledding to avoid it. Plus, they also allowed more fantasy points to running backs in the passing game than rushing game. So, like, it just sets up perfectly for him. So it's like, and then we have all this uncertainty with guys like who I'd want to be pivoting to instead to try to beat him. You know, I would want to be going to like a Miles Sanders potentially, who, but you know, that's going to be a tougher matchup than expected because Washington has a really tough front line. But also we have to worry about him being banged up and not getting a full workload. The only other guy that I really love besides McCaffrey is in the same game is Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
You know, because Kamara it's a tough matchup with Tampa Bay. I mean, I like him, but it's still tough. Dalvin Cook potentially could go toe to toe, you know, on a good week. And then, you know, maybe we talk about Todd Gurley, you know, try to use him while we can, while his knee is healthy. And that's certainly a good game environment. But, I mean, man, it's like we're paying so much, but at least we can like count on that production and get different in other places. So, man, I'm kind of unsure. I think I'm going to take the overweight approach as well. But let's talk about Josh Jacobs, because that's a guy, I mean, I have to love on the other side of the game. Panthers were ranked dead last in DVOA versus the run. Raiders obviously can be annoying using Jalen Richard in the passing game. But they project, you know, the Carolina defense to be extremely poor this season. And so Jacobs would score all of his points when they were winning games, right? Like he was the guy, if they were down, he'd get completely game scripted out. They are 1.5 point favorites, opened as 3 point favorites. But so this should be a closer, like at least very competitive game, you would hope. And that leads me to thinking that this could be a 2 touchdown game for Josh Jacobs. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I currently have it as a 3-point game. I think you just reversed that. It opened at a 1.5 and it's at 3 right now. But looking at the first 8 games for Oakland, I mean, this might be the only spot that I buy like Josh Jacobs. I was kind of obviously just coming off of best ball and didn't really like Josh Jacobs' opening schedule. Like he's got a tough schedule overall, but this spot versus Carolina, I mean, I see him just toting the rock a lot. Obviously not a great DraftKings play just because we're unsure of the catches being there. But they did let quite a few guys go that were running backs that could potentially steal the catches, third down work for Jacobs. And I feel like this is a spot where they're just going to hammer Jacobs quite a bit. There's not a lot of spots that I feel like I have a lot of conviction or confidence in, but this is one where I just think like Jacobs is the guy. Gruden's going to make sure he gets the ball quite a bit in this game. So I like this way more than like I want to pay $10K for McCaffrey. And if he does have success, it's going to take a lot less plays for Carolina, even though, you know, having Joe Brady and they were talking about having, you know, really quick pace to their offense, which, I mean, that's obviously a positive for McCaffrey. I just feel like Oakland could, you know, really slow this game down quite a bit with being effective with Jacobs.
Yeah, and I think it's a good way to leverage it. Like I said, I'll be on Josh Jacobs as well. I really don't like playing the two of them together. I know some people suspect that, you know, Josh Jacobs could score, you know, 2 touchdowns, which we want him to do, and stay in the game script. And then that, you know, involves CMC getting all these checkdowns on the way back. But I really don't want my 10K guy to have to get there that way. So I'm not really interested in that. That's definitely one way I would leverage it. The other thing I would note at the top, and we'll get to him, I'm sure, Antonio Gibson at 4,000. I'm not really going to be playing McCaffrey with Gibson because that's going to be the natural build that everybody goes to, and that's just double chalk it works because it's $14K for the both. But I think that's where you want to split it up and do something like a, Kamara Mixon or an Eckler Mixon or something like that, and use the same amount of money with two other guys that could still have themselves a game, and then really leverage yourself up over the field that way. So if you are going to use CMC overweight like I am, I just wouldn't be putting him with the chalk value running back. That's one note that I would make there.
Yeah, let's talk about Antonio Gibson, because he kind of looks like the free square of the week. I mean, he basically, for cash games, he certainly is. But there is some uncertainty there for sure. But, he definitely emerged as the guy. I mean, he's uber talented. We all were, expecting that. People were speculating, and then all of a sudden they got rid of Adrian Peterson. And then Adrian Peterson's in the media telling everybody that how great Gibson is and how he's just a perfect fit for this offense. And so it just made it sound even more and more that Gibson is the guy, right? So this is a guy who's got a lot of talent, on a team where they love to run the ball, especially if they were using Adrian Peterson, and, doesn't have a ton of talented competition behind him. And so he's only 4K, which is the new minimum now. If anyone isn't aware, we don't get the 3K running backs anymore. There's still 3K wide receivers for minimum, but the new minimum priced running backs on DraftKings are 4,000. That pairing is going to be uber chalky. So I agree with you that, especially for the large field stuff. But Brett, what are you thinking about with Gibson?
Yeah, I don't exactly know where I'm going to be on Gibson when it all comes down to it, because you're going to need some cheap pieces. And I mean, Gibson, we still project to have the lion's share of the Washington role here. And I like that game in general with all the cheap pieces that you can correlate with each other, and then grabbing studs. The other 4K running back that I have currently in my player pool is Chris Thompson, just in a game script where Jacksonville is obviously going to be coming from behind. And, he gets paired up with Jay Gruden, both ex-Washington guys. And Chris Thompson was used, in this pass receiving role. So I'm going to have a decent share, I think, of both of those guys. I don't know where I'm going to come down to it. You're right. Antonio Gibson, I think, is going to be the cash game play, but tournament wise, I really want to try and stay away from him as much as possible outside of like game stacks. But if I'm going to want to spend up at wide receivers, which I think a lot of the stud wide receivers are going to be low owned, I'm going to have to work in plenty of like Gibson and Chris Thompson in my lineups.
He was my pivot as well, actually. The Jay Gruden thing gets me. I'm a big narrative guy. You guys will find that out. Anyone listening who follows me on other stuff, I'll take it a lot. And I think it's, in football, even more important. They want their guy, right? They wanted to get him back in there. He's a guy that was used a lot. And it's kind of the opposite. One guy we didn't talk about, but the Indy situation is always going to be tricky. But Marlon Mack, I think, he's kind of like a cheaper Josh Jacobs, where they need that narrative of them, the game script of them being up and just pound, and just use him all game. And that's a spot opposite to what I talked about with going running backs against each other, where you've got him at 5,300, Chris Thompson at 4,000. That's a completely unique build to get up to these higher priced wide receivers. And you've got a spot where that actually could work, because then if Mac does score the 2 touchdowns, I don't want 10K CMC in that other game coming back with all those checkdowns, but I wouldn't mind a 4K Chris Thompson coming back. And most people are going to have Gibson in that slot as well. So it's a way to get unique while still having a game script that makes sense. So I do like that call a lot there, Brett.
Yeah, I'm on board with Thompson. I believe in that narrative too as well. I also like the fact, the dude's explosive. He just can't stay healthy, right? But he's healthy now, and then there's the competition is falling wayside right now. The Jacksonville rushing situation is now down to basically James Robinson and Chris Thompson, because they got rid of Fournette. Zigbo went down. And then who's the other guy? Raquel Armstead. Yeah, he's
on COVID
well.
for the second time.
Yeah. So, James Robinson's a guy that's getting some hype too, but and he's probably worth the consideration for GPPs as well. But Chris Thompson just makes a lot of sense, right, to get him involved. We always wanted more passing, more rushes. The guy's explosive, and we were always calling for it. It's like now their hand might be forced in this game because we can pretty much guarantee that they're going to be down in this one. And Thompson just makes a lot of sense. So I like that, especially obviously for DraftKings on the PPR format.
My last lookup on Player Profiler, just to get an idea of what James Robinson looked like in college. And then I always love to see who his best comparable is. His best comparable is Kenneth Dixon. So not a guy that was ever too exciting in the NFL, but I don't know, he's going to get the opportunity. And the coaches have, like Jay Gruden came out and said that he can carry the workload. Now, does that mean Leonard Fournette type of workload, or what does that mean? But we know they're going to be in a negative game script, probably all 16 games this year. So it should be interesting to see week one. This might be your only opportunity to get him at 4K. But again, I don't mind working him in there. It's just tough to see a lot of production out of this guy in the second half.
Yeah, and Tambo's hit on an interesting one too with the Marlon Mack situation, because Jonathan Taylor's the hyped guy, so it's interesting. So he's so in favor that Marlon Mack's fallen out of favor, but this could be especially with Jacksonville being so bad in general, so bad against the run, game strip could totally just give this ball to Marlon Mack all game and have high touchdown equity, and we'll see as the season goes along. So, I mean, he's definitely has to be in consideration as a good leverage play. So I like that. Now, what about some other guys here? I mean, Chris Carson is somebody that kind of pops out to me, right? The narrative is now about letting Russ rip, right? That's what everyone's saying. And so people are just kind of overlooking the fact that Seattle doesn't ever let Russ rip. And they let Chris Carson rip, right? And they're going to just want to rush the ball all game. It's in the dome. The touchdown equity is high. It's a potential shootout. They did get him more involved in the passing game last season. I'd like to see more of it, but I think we could see more of it. What are your guys' thoughts with him?
Yeah, so I just have a Seattle rule. If I roll with Chris Carson, I'm probably not too excited with this game in general, because that means Seattle is going to be up. I guess you can bring it back with the Atlanta passers, right? But the best thing that you want to see for this Seattle offense, if you have some Russ stacks out there, is Atlanta getting an early lead. That way they can put the gas to the put it down and actually let Russ play 4 quarters. But I do like Carson, and I have him tagged as in tournaments, but I don't think I will have any other Seattle exposure. And if Seattle's up, I think it kind of drains, because Seattle plays a very slow plotting game, and I don't think that's good for the over-under, right? So if Chris Carson gets off, I like the under, whereas if Atlanta gets off early, I expect Seattle to pass, and then I would really like the over there.
Yeah, I'm in on Carson. I think you just said it, and it's whatever people want to happen doesn't mean that's going to happen, and that's the thing with Russ. So they're going to stick to their plan. Maybe people forget some of these scenarios from last year. We'll get to tight end, but tight end against Arizona is a thing. Running back against Atlanta has always been a thing. They've started picking it up, like you said, with the pass catching as well. That hurts Atlanta even more if there's some checkdowns to Carson. I think guys just, early in the season, they're going to want to pound the rock. I also heard some stuff last night that I thought was interesting around this restart and how normally defenses are, better than offenses coming back from something like this. We haven't seen necessarily this come back, with no preseason and whatnot, but typically defense rules out. But I think right now, some of these D linemen and whatnot have just been getting, you saw it last night, even with David Johnson and CEH, it was just they were taking it for 6 yards at a time, 15 yards at a time. And these teams that are going to go with their, if you want to call him a bell cow kind of, a guy like Carson that's just going to stick with and run as often as they do, I think they are going to be chunking out 6, 10, 15, and the next thing you know, he's in the box, and he does that a couple times. And like Brett said, you can run it back with a guy who we'll get to, but I like Ridley on the other side. And I think that'd be a great little secondary correlation to throw in your lineup with Carson and Ridley that not as many people will be on when most are focused on the Washington and the Philly game, for example, or something else of that nature. So I do like that for a little mini stack there.
Another angle that strikes me in this game that people haven't really, everyone's assuming that, Atlanta on this high-powered offense, Seattle was so bad on the defensive end last season, but their secondary has gotten a lot better. So they got Jamal Adams now. And so, you know, they teamed up with Dunbar, Shaq Griffin, Diggs, Marquise Blair. So their big weakness is going to be in the rushing game as well. So this could be a game where both running backs are going to be in play. So let's talk about Todd Gurley. Everyone has an opinion on Todd Gurley. I'm kind of high on Todd Gurley to start this season, at least higher than other people are in Atlanta. I think he still has some stuff left in the tank, and he's healthy now. And until we see otherwise, then you know, they just don't have much competition. You know, Brian Hill is not a guy that they want, you know, he's his backup. There's not a guy that is very productive at any level. And then they have Ito, but that's like, there's really no competition for him. So if he comes out the gate running against this awful rushing defense, at least they project to be incredibly bad, then this could be a good game, at least in the Dome. What are your guys' thoughts? No?
I mean, I love Gurley, and it's mainly the offense around him in this situation. I mean, is he better than Devontae Freeman, right? Like, even if he is the same as Devontae Freeman, I would be buying Devontae Freeman at 6.1 in this situation. I like this spot a lot. It's week 1. We don't have to really worry about health concerns with Gurley, right? So we're getting a fresh Todd Gurley. You know, a guy like David Johnson last night, you know, where a lot of people were down on him, and he actually looked explosive on that one touchdown run that he had. It's a situation where I kind of want to get in early on a guy like Gurley. So
here, we have look at that promo ad early on Gurley.
Gurley. 10.8% we have him at RotoGrinders, and I would say I'm going to be at least 2x of that on the field. So,
Tambo.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to be overweight as well. Same thing, but the other way around. I guess what I'm seeing more so for me is that this game looks like it's going to be stacked up quite a bit, and I'm really liking the secondary correlations more. Like, I like it. You know, I just mentioned the one with Carson and Ridley. Could be Carson and Hayden Hurst, who we'll get to later, but then you can flip it, and I got Gurley, and then you can go back the other way with a guy like DK Metcalf, who's extremely cheap, or a Tyler Lockett, you know, different guys there in that range. So I'm going to be using it more in that sense, but I like what you said about Gurley and kind of everything I said before, how they're just going to feed this guy, and he's just going to be able to run for 6, 10, 15, that sort of thing. I see that with both of these guys. I don't really like, again, I really don't like playing two running backs against each other. Just normally doesn't work out or give you the upside that you want, the ceiling. But I don't mind these guys separately on their own.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to the Greg Cosell podcast. I always mention that on the show. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, that's your boy.
Yeah, I really respect him. But what his take was that was super interesting was that, you know, he was saying that basically tackling is an art that needs to be, you know, repetition over and over and over again. So he's saying preseason really drives that in. And, you know, now that we're without that he expects tackling to be weak across the NFL, at least for the first few weeks. And I think we saw some of that with some of those, you know, maybe those runs that we thought would be 3 to 5 yards ended up being 6 to 10 last night. Some guys looked especially fresh, like David Johnson looked good, but maybe that's just a symptom of poor tackling at this point. So I think Gurley is a guy that could certainly, you know, power his way through. The guys that stand out even more would be guys like Derrick Henry for sure, but Gurley's a banger, you know, as long as his knee's good. So I like that angle. All right. Any other guys that you want to hit on, Tambo?
The only other couple there, one was Kenyon Drake. You mentioned him there quickly, but, you know, I think it kind of makes sense. The game, the flow, you know, just 6,400. It's kind of, you know, it was him and Sanders. They're both 6,400. Just a few more question marks around Sanders versus, a guy like Drake. And so I'm more in on Drake, but I do like Sanders still this week as well. So kind of rounds it up for me really for this area. And then I don't know, I guess we didn't talk a lot about Eckler. I do like that game. There was some news today. Mike Pouncey, the center for the Chargers, is out for week 1. So I'm not sure if you guys, you know, go off of that stuff. It normally affects the running back, but in a sense of, and the quarterback, but in a sense of a guy like Eckler, we were hoping for sort of a $3,000 less Christian McCaffrey. of usage this year, and I'm not sure if that will be the same or not, but I'll still try it out at 7,000. I'm definitely in, especially against Cincinnati. I do like that spot as well.
Yeah, I mean, they always say like a center is like the quarterback of the offensive line. So losing a guy like that, it's got to be tough for the other offensive linemen, right? Whether that's,
Definitely.
run blocking or pass blocking. So
yeah, but that might create check down,
checkdowns, exactly.
Yeah, over and over again, which is what Tyrod Taylor likes to do anyway, and he likes to run himself. So that could actually benefit. I like him too. I mean, obviously in PPR formats, we're just looking for running backs who can get, just constant peppered in the passing game, and he certainly is top of the list. And I think he's undervalued right now. At least.
Yeah, I mean, if you can find $200, that's what I was saying earlier. You got CMC and Gibson is like the cash game play, but you can play Eckler and Kamara. I mean, that to me screams GPP upside for these large field tournaments. It's $200 more. You have to save $200 somewhere, but you can do that on defense, tight end, so many places. And that just to me is the way bigger upside and ceiling that you could find. It could be worse, but that's sort of the risk you take.
Yeah, I guess one guy that I would want to hear maybe your takes on, Kirk Dees, you can take this, is Miles Sanders, right? We heard that he possibly won't take a full workload. Is that something that you're taking in consideration, or are you just hammering the spot with, at Washington? Looks like a great spot for Miles Sanders week 1 on paper, just as long as he gets his full workload. Where do you stand there?
I think Washington up front is pretty stout, and they're going to be a pretty good defense, at least in that regard. I also don't want to mess with hamstrings, and that worries me. So I don't know, but I think the risk. So I think there's a lot of risk with him. So I would even throw out the idea of playing Boston Scott in some lineups.
Sure.
This week.
Is he min? Is he 4K?
He should be 4K.
I haven't even looked at it.
I'm sure he is.
He's 4,800. So yep.
But I mean, that's just trying to win a large field GPP. But yeah, I mean, I'm probably out on Sanders. I'd like him typically in the workload, but I think this game. I mean, for me, I'm buying the Kool-Aid on the passing game on Philly, which we'll get into when we head over to wide receiver in a second after we get to quarterback. I'm just trying to scroll through for seeing Aaron Jones interests me. I know it's the same old narrative, will he be used in the passing game? They just like to give their guy, Jamal Williams, and now we've got what's his name? Who's the new guy? Austin
AJ Dillon.
Yeah, AJ Dillon. Why am I saying Austin Dillon?
His first name could be Austin. You never know.
Maybe. Anyway, I have no clue. Anyways, so this Vikings defense is going to be a lot worse than I think this year. Than people just kind of always assume that they're good, but they're going to be really young. And
their defensive backfield is very young. Devontae gets a great matchup. So I don't know what they look like up front or in the linebackers, but yeah.
Yeah. So I just could see a big game with Aaron Jones and everybody Dalvin Cook is kind of the pivot play already, but no one's talking about Aaron Jones at this point. So I just see upside there as kind of a tournament play, but that's kind of it for me.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these timeshare spots, I know Tambo, you talked about Marlon Mack, kind of agree with you with the upside there if coach speak is true with Mack. But I think most of these other timeshares Baltimore, probably going to avoid that. Cleveland, Tampa Bay, Buffalo, just spots. San Fran, probably spots that I avoid those until I get more of a read on that situation. I don't know. You like any of those timeshare spots, Kirk Dees?
I'll take some shots with. I don't even know. No, I don't like timeshares, but and I don't like them in general as a vacation either. But Tariq Cohen is a guy that I'll take some shots on, who I'm constantly trying to force. But in a dome against Detroit, with Montgomery being hobbled,
it does look like he's on the better side of questionable now, based upon practice reports this morning.
but he's not very good anyway.
Right.
And I always want more Tariq Cohen. And if this just gives them an excuse to maybe ramp him out a little bit more, and they've also talked about using him more in the passing game this season. Obviously, it's just coach speak. We don't know for sure, but we'll see what happens. But, like, he's a guy that could break one to the house, and he's 4,900. That's it. I'm really kind of reaching here at this point.
Yeah.
So let's I mean, there's plenty of good plays everywhere, but let's go on over to QB, and then we'll follow that with our wide receivers. But let's start it off with your take on Lamar. Killer B, you can lead this one, but we love his rushing floor. We love the potential for rushing touchdowns. You know, there's all the talk about him having to air it out a lot more this season. And, you know, we've got the concentrated target tree with Mark Andrews, who I know you like and who's probably going to be a top play of yours for tight end. I'm just guessing, but I know you love that guy. And now that Hayden Hurst is gone, and they were basically splitting snaps last season.
Yeah.
So we know that it's going to be Hollywood Brown and Mark Andrews in the passing game. That's going to be the focus. But are they going to have to pass much in this game against Cleveland? I don't know. But what are your thoughts?
So I do love this spot for Lamar. I don't really look at ownership too much for quarterbacks. He is our highest own on RG right now. I think he was coming in at right around 15%. But yeah, I do love this spot. You kind of mentioned no Hayden Hurst here, which should allow Mark Andrews at least to see the field more targets. I actually do love the double stack Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews this week. Cleveland cornerbacks this week, both Kevin Johnson and Greedy Williams are already ruled out. MJ Stewart is questionable. And then they had their starting safety on paper was lost in August, Grant Deloitte or whatever his last name is. So this Cleveland defensive backfield is just ravaged. All three starters are ruled out. So, and if you're worried about them not like, you know, putting it down in week one, I mean, just look at Miami last year. They beat the Dolphins 52-10. He had 7 total touchdowns, 5 through the air, 2 on the ground. I mean, I just feel like this is a great spot, and I know where the production's coming from. So, yeah, I'm going to have plenty of the double-stacked Baltimore. And then love bringing it back with Odell. Jarvis Landry had off-season hip surgery. They're already talking about limiting his snaps in week 1. So give me all the ODB, with this stack. So
you read the latest news with ODB?
You know, I almost brought it up, but I was just like, even with the latest news of ODB, give me
a freak.
Yeah.
Cambo, is that a par for the course out in Canada?
No, that ain't it. I can tell you that.
Par for the course.
Lamar, Tambo.
So you guys don't know this about me, but that's my squad. So speaking of Canada, being up here, we can pick whatever team we want. I didn't bandwagon Lamar. I've been on it since I had to battle back in the days with the Joe Flacco elite and all this stuff, but even before then. But I am a Ravens fan, and this is actually a week where, you know, could it happen? Sure. I'm not too in on it. I think, you know, just coming out, like I think you said, I really don't want to get involved with that committee, but I do think they're going to run the ball a lot more. I know that everything should open up for them. It's just a spot I want to be underweight. You got 15% Lamar. You got 25% Marquise Brown. You got 10, 12% Mark Andrews. I mean, it seems like a slam dunk, and whenever it seems too good to be true, it usually is. Now, with that said, it's almost like the Atlanta-Seattle situation for me. I certainly do like having this as a secondary stack. I like ODB, back to all the jokes we just said. I'm in on that play, and I don't mind it with like a Mark Andrews and him. I think that'll be a less common secondary stack. Even though they both come with some ownership, together and just those two, probably not as common. I mean, Marquise Brown, love Hollywood, stoked that he's, you know, fully healthy now finally. Hope he rips it up for 2-3 touchdowns. You can call it the emotional hedge if you want, but I just don't see it on a week where there's so many plays at wide receiver that I just need to plug him in. I think he's a cash game play. Makes perfect sense there, but for tournaments, I'll certainly be underweight on him as well as Lamar and the entire stack as a whole. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and so we should at least mention the new coaching regime for Cleveland. You know, thank God Freddie Kitchens is gone. And then for the you know, at least from that guy would waste so much clock. So maybe we can expect some more plays, a little bit of a faster offense for Cleveland. But really, what stands to me is that the new defensive coordinator, Joe Woods, it's Woods or Wood. But it's going to take some time to develop some chemistry for this defense. This is a defense that just got decimated against the run last season, and they project to be pretty poor. Their secondary projects to be pretty good. So it just should make sense that it would be easy, smooth sailing from the rushing game, which both of you guys mentioned. And so maybe that, takes away from a number of plays standpoint, and plus just the fact that they should be able to control this game. So maybe the ceiling isn't quite as high as we're expecting for Lamar for paying on to start this slate. But like QB salaries are all kind of priced together. But there's, except for Lamar that stands out, 8,100. But that's a lot of salary. Then from there, there's like Drew Brees a little bit higher at 6,800. There's Carson Wentz, but like everyone's kind of all grouped together from there in the high fives to up to around 7K, with Russ. So who are the next guys that you find yourself going towards if you're not in on Lamar this week, Tambo?
I liked Tyrod until, like I said, the center news. I think it hurts him a lot more than it hurts Eckler. So, I really think that game is one that's just going to be a bit sloppy. I know it doesn't have the highest total, but I'm sort of erasing these totals a little bit, not like the 39 Jets-Buffalo one, but some of these other games where I still think there's just so many unknowns. A game where it's Tyrod Taylor versus Joe Burrow, that interests me. But again, the total doesn't really matter to me. I think with all the stuff, you mentioned the Greg Cosell stuff. That's the same information I was going off of when I was bringing that up. I couldn't remember who I'd heard. I listened to so much stuff coming into this and reading things, but that was really where it came from. So, some other guys that interest me would be Carson Wentz. We talked about that game. I think, Deshaun Jackson is going to be popular, but there's other ways to move around that game. If we don't think Sanders is going to be as strong of a play, then, they're going to move the ball in other ways. And I think that's one of them. I think, Russell Wilson, we talked about, I'm more on the secondary correlations there. Cam Newton is an interesting one to me in New England. This is a first start for him, a bunch of unknowns, but he's just 6,100. I'm not saying he's going to do things like Lamar or anything, but he's also $2,000 less. That's my other big thing about Lamar is I got trouble with an $8,100 salary at the quarterback position. I'd much rather spend it elsewhere. And typically, if you look at Millie Maker winners in the past and those that have done the research, just use Millie Maker as the example for large field, it's a lot of cheaper quarterbacks, right? So we've got a lot of them this week, like you mentioned. So those are some of the ones that stand out. I'd be interested to hear your guys' takes on some of the others. Maybe a Minshew, kind of interesting. A Mitch Trubisky is getting some love. I'm not so sure I'm there yet with him, but what do you guys got? Brett, where are you at with these quarterbacks?
Yeah, I love Carson Wentz. I think that's just a high floor play. Cam Newton in an unknown situation like that also. Nice soft landing spot home against Miami in week 1. I already just said how Lamar kind of blew them out of the waters in week 1 last year. So feel like that's a great gamble too. I'm even good going down to Dwayne Haskins at 5K. He kind of ended the year last year with a little bit of confidence going into this year, which I think is really big. No Jay Gruden, no, just a whole new everything, right? And at 5K, it just allows you to do a lot of unique things. So I'm good going all the way down there. Even Trubisky at 5,400, pairing him up with Allen Robinson, I think is pretty easy. And I think if David Montgomery does play, I'll probably avoid the running backs a little bit. I'll still mix in Tariq Cohen and maybe double stacks there. But I just really like that situation. And Detroit, Galladay did not practice today, which could make Marvin Jones kind of chalky. So I guess we'll just
a quick note on that because you brought it up. Two things came up while we were recording. One is Galladay is looking like he's going to be out, as well as Mike Evans has been moved to doubtful. So I know we're segueing into these positions, but that's some big news. And if you talk about back to what we're talking about just at this moment with quarterback and stacks, you look at, like you said, Trubisky. You can get Anthony Miller or Robinson in there with them. Cohen, who Kirk just talked about, right? You mix that in as like a triple stack, and then you end up with a guy the other way, like a Marvin Jones. I think it's Marvin Hall is behind him. Cephas. There's another guy. There's a couple guys in Detroit that are super cheap.
Amendola, who's been banged up, but can put up a big game for you. I was expecting that news out of both of those guys, and so that's the hamstring. That's why I'm shying away from that. That's Mike Evans is the hamstring, and I think Kenny Golladay is the hamstring too as well.
There's a lot of AC joints out there too. I don't know which one's the shoulders. That might have been Mike Williams is definitely a shoulder for sure. But yeah, there are a few AC joints out there.
But one thing I've learned is you don't mess with the hamstring. That's just from years of DFS. That's why Miles Sanders is such a concern to me. But Carson Wentz.
I thought we were going to have a personal story about your own hamstring injuries.
No, I'll tell you a personal story.
Those playing days are over with.
I was the least flexible male student in my high school class. And
was that voted upon, or what was this?
No, it was we had they had to measure our sit and reach and stuff for gym class, and the teacher goes on, "Hey, Kirkwood, you're the second worst, least flexible student in our class, and you know who number one is?" And I'm not gonna say that, but he's like, it was this big fat girl, and
jeez, that's a pretty mean. It was a public school, I'm assuming, right there.
Yeah,
just getting shamed.
Shaming.
Yeah. So
you can't even touch your toes.
That's always stood with me. Anyways, but back to Carson Wentz. Love him. So I am a little bit worried though. So like I said, I keep talking about the front seven of they're extremely talented on Washington, and their secondary is not extreme.
Football team.
Shout out to Cal, who bought the domain years ago and sold them the Washington football. He got robbed because he sold it for so little, because he didn't realize what was happening when they made the offer. But it was him. They gave him like $10,000, which he donated to charity.
I didn't even hear this story. Oh no, that's
pretty crazy.
Yeah. But anyway, that is crazy, because he bought it thinking for college domain names back in the day. But anyways, so I worry about when Wentz gets pressured, he can struggle, right? And so I worry about them being able to hold up. But it's certainly a secondary that he can pick on. There's no more Josh Norman anymore, but it's Quentin Dunbar, Ronald Darby, Kendall Fuller. I mean, these are names that we've always attacked. And, let's just get into it. Let's just talk about Deshaun Jackson and why he's just such a smash play. So first of all, Reagers might be playing now.
It looks like he's good to go.
But that's fine. It's still Deshaun Jackson is number one right now on that depth chart, and there's not much more behind it. And we know about those splits, right? You guys know about those splits, the Deshaun Jackson splits?
Revenge game splits?
Well, no, not the revenge game splits. The first week one stats.
Is week one versus Washington?
Washington, 2019, 8 receptions, 154 yards, 2 TDs. The year before, New Orleans, 5 receptions, 146 yards, 2 TDs. 2 years prior, Pitt, 6 receptions, 102 yards. I mean, this guy is a week one machine.
It's the only week he plays. It's literally the only week he plays.
That's it. You got it. If you want to make money on him, you got to do it this week. So and he's going to be chalk, which is scary, right? Everyone's talking, but you got to go all in on him. That's what you have to do. I'm telling you. But he's cheap, right? And this game could I think I kind of like this game to shoot out a little bit too. But it's going to be. I mean, that's going to be a popular pairing with the chalk running back and then Deshaun in there. So try to differentiate those stacks a little bit without Gibson or whatever. But or at least
tight ends are in play. You're going to be seeing a lot of.
Goddard is interesting to me.
I like him for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe they Zach Ertz sees a little bit less usage, but anyway, so Carson Wentz definitely in play. Love him. From there, I don't even care who I play. I'm buying Cam Newton. I'm all in on. I'm in on Cam Newton this season. I think he's going to have a good season. He's going to, as long as he's healthy, right? They're going to use him in the running. They're going to use him to rush. because that's just what he's good at. And Belichick, plays to everybody's strengths. And, unless there's going to try to protect his health, I don't know. But, I got to think that they're going to be using this guy in the rushing game and figure out he's going to scheme some good plays for him. So I'm there. He's also building up a good rapport, at least the local media with him and Harry are really hitting it off together. And he's been always on practice keying in on Edelman. So it's it makes it pretty easy. Those are the guys, those are going to be his guys. And then I think there's going to be some sneaky rushing upside. Trubisky, sure, I can get it behind it because he's always had good games against Detroit. And it's because they play man. And so, if we look, he went for 20. I think he won a Millie Maker for someone last year.
He's won multiple Millie Makers. Yeah. I think a lot of them were 2 years ago.
Two of I don't know. But he put up 28 fantasy points against Detroit in his last game, 330 yards passing, three passing TDs. So I can get behind that. Tyrod I was interested in too, just because potentially I don't know what the ceiling is with this with this guy. There's never seems to be much, but you do get a nice rushing floor, but that does scare me with the center going down. But he's still cheap that it's there. Drew Brees. Let's talk about Drew Brees or Kyler. Obviously we can do Matt Ryan, just because of that game scenario. But Drew Brees is probably going to go overlooked. I'll stay clear of Tom Brady now for sure without Mike Evans because
yes,
especially now. So what are they going to do with Godwin? We want Godwin in the slot in this game, but now is it going to be Godwin on the outside and have to deal with Lattimore or I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. You just made a good point that I forgot to bring up earlier with the doubtful Evans news, that was sort of the only way I was thinking of even playing him. And I know there's going to be some backups like Watson or Scotty Miller are the two guys that come to mind. But, as far as the wide receivers go, but I don't think that's enticing enough for me now with those stacks to risk it. I just, they'll be cheaper. That makes the stacks cheaper if you like that game to shoot out. So by all means, you could go there for that reason. But I wouldn't have a bunch of them, that's for sure. I like Brett's take earlier on Haskins, and I like what you were going there with Breeze, maybe the other way, or Matt Ryan as something sneaky when most are going Wilson. I like those plays better.
I don't know how much ownership I'll have on Drew Brees this whole year. Just with the Taysom Hill coming in the red zone, he's going to take away even 15 to 20% of his potential touchdowns. That's just too much. By the way, though, Taysom Hill is a tight end on FanDuel, so it becomes more interesting if you want to take a shot with him at min price at tight end over there.
All right, I got the play. This is my favorite guy always. We're gonna round. This will be the end of QB right now. Josh Allen. Josh Allen is the play. So
it's just such a terrible game.
No.
Yeah, so you guys look at the total. Nobody wants to play. Oh, this has a. You think about Buffalo's defense, right? They should be able to control this game. Such a great defense. But what people are missing is the fact that the Jets' defense, secondary, projects to be the worst secondary in all of football this season per Pro Football Focus, right? This is the first game of the season. He's got a new shiny toy in Stephon Diggs. He loves to throw the ball deep. He sucks at it, but he loves it. But you gotta be optimistic and think that there could be some improvement there. He also scored 6 more rushing touchdowns than Lamar Jackson last season. So he's their goal line rushing back. He's got the nut passing matchup, and he's got new weapons. So yes, I think it's bad. It does worry me that the defense will just completely manhandle the Jets, and so the game script could get out of hand, and they could just run the ball and run the clock out. But I think they're gonna, at least to start, go off. And it's not it's the total. The spread is not too high, where you think you're a monster blowout, where it's only a 6.5 point total. But I see upside here when a lot of other people don't. So am I crazy? You guys both think I am?
I don't love it because of what you said. My thing was back to, the same point on the Greg Cosell stuff earlier, is it's kind of goes hand in hand with the, flip-flop back to the offense side. These guys had no time to work together. He's already pretty bad with the deep ball. That's sort of Stephon Diggs' thing. I don't really think they're going to mesh or gel right out of the gate, but they could. I can see your angle if you want to get, a couple of them in, maybe Dawson Knox, run it back the other way with your Jamison Crowder, who will be popular, or even a Le'Veon Bell, and just say he, starts doing his thing on the ground, and then Allen has to come from behind. You could build a story for it. It's just not the one I'm most excited about. And then also at 6,500, yes, he can, rush in some touchdowns and whatnot, but I'm not really in at that price when you got Matt Ryan, who, I think is sneakier on the other side of that Seattle game when everyone wants to use Wilson. And then, looking at dropping down, we just talked about Wentz being at 6,300 and Cam at 61. There's just better plays that I like more. So I don't hate it, but I'm not in on it. So it won't be too much in my player pool.
Yeah, I'm probably going to avoid this game in general. I just don't love the situation. I feel like this is not, there's not going to be a lot of plays. If he can connect on deep ball early, then you hit it. Right?
So he's got two legitimate, really solid deep threats with John Brown, who he has that chemistry with, who should now get freed up more. Stephon Diggs should take the spotlight away from him. So, that's a really, nice low-owned wide receiver play. I could see, all you need is – so even if you don't if you can't get on board with Josh Allen, all you need is one long touchdown from John Brown and you're good to go. And I'm telling you, it's definitely happening in this game. I promise you guys, there will be one between either him and Diggs, and maybe multiple. So I'm gonna plant my flag. I'm gonna be in on him, but I get it if you guys aren't coming along. So I tried. All right, wide receiver. Unless you guys have it.
Before we continue to trim our player pools, let's talk about how we can trim our family jewels and the tools that we might use. So what we're talking about here, guys, this podcast is sponsored by Manscaped. Best men's below-the-waist grooming you can get. Precision engine tools for your family jewels. Obsess over the technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. So I want to talk quickly about a couple of things about Manscaped. They got their third-generation trimmer. Features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to advanced skin-safe technology powered by Manscaped. Trademark. When I tell you this is premium, I mean premium. The battery will last up to 90 minutes. You need 90 minutes. I don't know what to tell you. You got to figure some other stuff out, but it will last up to 90 minutes. It's waterproof. It's got a cool LED light, which illuminates the grooming areas so you can see better, get a finer trim. They've also upgraded to a 7,000 RPM motor with quiet stroke technology. And let's not forget about the charging stand. Show your mower off loud and proud because this intelligently designed stand is a convenient charging dock that's powered by USB. If you are listening to me speak right now, I want you to experience it firsthand for yourself. Trim that junk of yours. Get 20% off plus free shipping with code ROTO, R-O-T-O, at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you. Trust me. Get 20% off free shipping with the code ROTO. That's R-O-T-O at manscaped.com.
Well done.
I can tell you that I know that Stevie, TPFL, and Big T both used Manscaped, and I'm sure that they really needed that upgraded 7,000 RPM motor with the quiet strokes for those two guys. So great job. So let's move on over to wide receiver. So there's going to be some chalk, but we've got good plays. So I guess we'll start right at the top because I know the blitz is going to always – the Derek Carty projection system, which is I don't know if you used that in the past, Tambo. Had you used that in the past?
Yeah, I've used it in the past. I've seen it, and I know that Michael Thomas gets the extra bump there. He gets the points put in, and he ends up.
He's in the blitz.
It works every time.
He will be in the blitz optimal every single week, and that includes this week. But he's 9K,
especially at home.
Yeah.
9K at home.
Yeah. So he's at the top. So let's start there and just talk about, do we spend or not spend?
I guess looking at that situation, the thing that sticks out is Emmanuel Sanders being wide receiver 2 now. Do you think that target share of wide receiver 2 increases, I tend to lean yes. So, I mean, as much as I do love Michael Thomas, I'm trying to figure out where we got him ownership-wise. Doesn't seem like we have a lot of ownership.
12% right now.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, that's – you know what? That's probably where I'm going to be. That stack might become more popular with Evans ruled out. But I probably am only going to try and put him in certain spots where I go with the cheap running backs. Probably will be right around that ownership. So I'm just not in total love with it, but I'd rather go in tournaments, Michael Thomas versus Christian McCaffrey at this point in time.
Yeah, I could see that. It makes some sense. I guess the challenge for me is week 1 and where we stand and what we got, right? I know that there's a lot of chalk, but you can still get away from it. We'll talk about some of the good plays. I think the pricing, though, like there's just so many cheap wide receivers that are going to get there. You know, it's just they're going to blow it wide open. And then that's why I said with CMC earlier, I know that becomes a little bit chalky, but even at just 25%, we know who he is. He rarely has a game less than 20. Now, you could say that about Thomas as well, but I think you just made a good point about a guy like Sanders. You talked earlier about Taysom Hill. We talked about Kamara. We talked about everything that they've got as far as weapons are concerned, that it could just end up being that 20-point game for him. And then you're stuck and you've got all these wide receivers at $5,000-$6,000 that went off, or even Devontae Adams is $7,300. And I think he's going to crush at that price tag. So it's like, there's just so many other options. Would you be contrarian naturally just by going that route with your build? Sure. But does it mean it's the best way? Not always, right? I don't think so. So we'll see. I mean, like we just talked about, too, with these injuries, I already see guys like Quintez Cephas popping up for Detroit, the Watsons, the Scotty Millers, all these guys, Marvin Hall with the Detroit situation, all of these guys are popping up as values. I just don't know how you do it when you've got all these options.
Yeah, I agree. I get it for cash games, and a blitz optimal would see that. I just don't think he's going to break the slate at 9K. And, I think like one of these, somebody at like, whether it's Hollywood Brown, Allen Robinson, Devontae Adams, like somebody cheaper is going to beat him, going to go off. And so I'm just going to plant my flag on some cheaper guys. I already told you guys how much I love Deshaun Jackson, all right. Deshaun Jackson outscores Michael Thomas this week. That's right. That's my take. Okay?
Going with the week 1 narrative, baby. One thing that I'll share with the listeners here, the wide receiver versus cornerback matchup that we have for premium subscribers, Devontae Adams is number 1 in that matchup. He is just way too cheap at $7,300. This feels like a spot where we don't have to really question. We have a veteran quarterback, his number 1 wide receiver, and then nobody else to throw the ball to. Devontae Adams will have a big week. Like I said, the Minnesota defensive backfield, very young, inexperienced. So, I expect Rodgers and Devontae week 1, they're just going to be – that combo is going to be phenomenal. And then also being at US Bank in a dome, pretty clean weather-wise, obviously, and then field being on turf. I love that spot.
I can get behind that. Any interest in T.Y. Hilton?
Yeah, I do. I talked about it a little bit at the top, not as much in a stack, but I don't mind him in maybe a secondary stack, or use him as the guy I'm bringing it back with. I mentioned Minshew just quickly up there. I do have a little love for him. I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but I got a little love for that side of the stack. I think DJ Chark, we're talking about wide receiver, and it coincides with that, is a guy that I'm definitely interested in. We talked about Chris Thompson. He can catch balls, he can catch 9-10 balls and get explosive with them, like you said. So if you got a cheap Minshew, Thompson, fit in your DJ Chark and then run it back with a guy like Hilton, a guy that can actually put up 2 touchdowns in a game, I'm good with that. And there's even some other guys on the Indy side. Who's the other guy I was looking at was Paris Campbell. $3,900. Yeah, $3,900. So I really think that's another interesting game stack, or 3-1, whatever you want to call it, that you're using it as. But, like you said, it's just tough to, play a guy like Minshew and feel comfortable. It's more large field stuff, which is what we're here to talk about. So I'm in on that, and T.Y. Hilton would get used that way, for sure.
I'm just concerned with just with Phillip Rivers in the deep ball there. And also just the offensive philosophy in Indy. I just feel like if there's one team this year that's going to be 50% run, 50% pass, it's going to be Indianapolis. They have the best offensive line. Their offensive philosophy just seems to, we're just going to run the ball down your throat, just old school football. And I question Phillip Rivers' arm at this point in time. So kind of off on Indy's offense in general, passing wise. But yeah, I think taking stabs at the running back spot, it makes sense. Ty only needs 4 catches to have a huge day, right? It's just, can Phillip Rivers throw that deep ball?
Yeah, he can.
We've seen him sling it to Keenan Allen, who is not a deep ball guy. He was, short A dot. So kind of just question where he's at with.
You're telling me
T.Y.
Hilton can't break one?
He's gonna. That's what I'm saying. I'm thinking of more him off like a slant, which is like the sidearm Rivers throw that he's just gonna hit him with that little sidearm
against Jacksonville.
And then T.Y. is much healthier and just gonna go to the house. Exactly. That's more what I'm seeing. But
it's
for
5,800.
I could see it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. The upside is there for 5,800. Like, it only takes one of these 80-yard freaking touchdowns to.
Talking about splits, though, Ty was always phenomenal at home in a dome, right, on turf. I mean, Jacksonville, you're playing basically a college football team in Jacksonville. They'd sold off their whole team. But,
true.
Yeah, I think I'd rather go somewhere else. But, yeah.
All right, I got one. I got a somewhere else. Allen Robinson, as reliable as it gets. Basically, you got to put your eggs in Mitchell Trubisky's basket, but which may worry a lot of people. But like I said before, he's played well versus man coverage, well against the Lions. The Lions don't have Darius Slay anymore, so that should benefit Robinson. He saw the 3rd most targets in the league last season. There's play volume concerns in this one for sure because we know how Patricia likes to milk the play clock and run the ball. So maybe, lack of plays in this one, but I just, I have to like the matchup. And another sneaky guy we can pair him in this game too is, Anthony Miller. That's a very easy tournament stack to do. Robinson, Miller, and Trubisky. What are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah, yep. I like it.
I'm gonna have quite a few of Allen Robinson, even outside of my Chicago-Detroit stacks for sure. Yep.
I also love DK Metcalf. I am buying into the reports of him and Russ working out together and developing a real off-season bond this season. His target tree also expanded dramatically throughout the second half of the season as the season went along. This guy's an athletic freak. And this is a secondary that Pro Football Focus ranked 30th this year. So there should be, able to attack in the passing game. I do worry about the run. But like I said, it's all we need is like one monster play from these guys. And they can also get there from just several plays. But at 5,800, I think these guys that's the range, right? Like 4, like high 4K to like 6K, 6,500. Yeah. Like that's where we can get like some massive upside because some of these guys are going to have huge games. It's going to happen. It happens every single slate.
Yeah. Just talking about it, you got starting at 4,900, Deshaun Jackson going up. You got Deshaun Jackson, Marquise Brown, Terry McLaurin,
Metcalf, you got to talk about him.
Hilton, Marvin Jones, Odell, like that's basically that range. And that's why I said, back to the Michael Thomas conversation, it makes it tough, but you've got those. And now you've got all these values that are going to trickle in from these injuries. So, there's just so many ways to go here, but I do like your call there on Metcalf quite a bit. And then we talked about earlier with Odell. That's the other guy I think is just too good of a play at 5,900, healthy, different, everything going on there. It's a spot to play him as well at 5,900. We've only got him at 8% ownership as of right now because of guys like Metcalf and McLaurin and Jackson and those that have the chalk associated with them. So I do like that call as well.
Let's talk about Julio. What do you guys think? I know you were Tambo was on Ridley, but Brett, who do you prefer, Ridley, Julio, or none of the above, or both?
I'd be more on the Ridley side there. Making stacks there. I think it was just grabbing either one. I don't I don't know if I ever double stacked yet with both of them. But yeah, I'm going to have probably less than the field there and just do strictly game stacks with Julio. Devontae is going to be peppered throughout my lineups for sure at that price.
I'm same there. I talked about Ridley already, and we're going to segue to tight end shortly. And, a guy like Hurst is there if I'm double stacking, so I can use that all the same and be fine with it, to be honest, and not really worry too much about Julio. And like you said, I like Devontae much more. And then again, all the other guys that are cheaper and just keep pumping it into running back and different stacks that I make and more expensive quarterback like Russ or Ryan. So it works better for me that way.
If we look at just from just like zooming out, I feel like that Atlanta-Seattle game has a chance to, go over 65 points if certain scenarios happen, right? If Atlanta scores early, and that's what you're looking for when you're trying to take down a tournament. So these Atlanta-Seattle stacks, I'm going to make most of those stacks as if Atlanta gets up early, and obviously just peppering in most of the pass catchers back and forth. That's the one game that I feel like has a shot of putting up a huge, huge number. A lot of these other games, I don't see it getting there. I don't know, just not as confident. But this game, I feel like if Atlanta gets up early and they unleash Seattle's full offense, I really like this spot.
Agree.
All right. I'm going to also, I mentioned John Brown, I think is a sneaky play for a long one against that defense. I'm going to mention one last one. Henry Ruggs.
Yes.
Nobody's talking about him, but playing Carolina, who's just projected to be a terrible defense. This is a guy who is going to start in the slot, who has the athletic talent to break one, right? And that's all I'm looking for, in this 5K range, is we want that, missed tackle, which we talked about, and go to the house. And I think he fits the mold here for that.
Yeah, sorry. And that's a good point, because I brought it up earlier with CMC talking about those secondary correlations. And there was a couple guys. Ruggs is one of them that I really like across from him. And then, again, I know we're talking about tight end here shortly, but a big Darren Waller fan as well. And that's just unique secondary correlations. You're just not going to see enough of them. Like you said, nobody's really even talking about Ruggs. You got other guys that you could risk is like Renfro and them, but I don't see the upside, right? Brian Edwards, I think, is the other one. So you could try and mess around there, but I like Ruggs a lot more and Waller, and that's two guys that you can get across from CMC and make your lineups with CMC unique while still going with a play that could bust at 10K.
Yeah, do not forget about Brian Edwards. There's a lot of good their beat writer has been talking a lot about him. He's also got height. He's 6'3" in comparison to Ruggs, 5'11". Ruggs is known as, the fastest guy now maybe in the NFL. So speed demon can take it to the house, what you want in a tournament. But Edwards, touchdown equity, him and Waller for sure in the red zone. Yeah, I like game stacks here, like I previously talked about with the Oakland Carolina game. So,
writing my Yahoo article this morning, I came to my attention that Waller ranked first in Football Outsiders DYAR, which is defensive adjusted yards above replacement. Long story short, he performs extremely. He's the top performing.
He's a freak.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Once he gets the catch, and all right. So I like him at tight end. So let's start there. So he's certainly in play, but who's going to be the chalk here? I think Mark Andrews.
I think people are going to pay down for tight end this week in a lot of builds
with Chris Herndon. Hayden Hurst, I know is pretty reasonable. He's cheap, 4,300. If he gets that same role as Atlanta gave Hooper last year, he's certainly capable of delivering on that role.
A lot of Herndon talk as well, 3,300.
Yeah, because he's so cheap. Buffalo has always been extremely good against opposing tight ends, but they also, everyone uses their stats that they ranked first against the tight end last season, but they didn't really face many good tight ends last season either. So I'm not sure how much weight you can put into any of that stuff. Plus it's, we know it's a good defense, but we also know that there's not many reliable passing options for Darnold at this point. Everybody's banged up, but looks like it's going to be Crowder and Herndon. There was a lot of great talk with Herndon over the off season, so it just makes a lot of sense. So he's 3,300, so I like that play too. Jack Doyle, I've heard people mention, is getting some love now.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I'm there myself. Do you guys have any thoughts?
One guy that I'm going to bump up for sure is TJ Hawkinson. If Galladay is out, I expect Chicago still to be pretty tough to run against. So, I mean, I think you can safely say he's going to have the second most amount of targets behind Marvin Jones. And Hawkinson's been a freak. If you read like all the preseason report or like all the beat reports. So I kind of want to get in early on Hawkinson. I've kind of already described my love for Mark Andrews. Kittle is the number one tight end playing against a Arizona scheme that's always given up points versus tight ends. I don't know if that's changed, but if we're going based upon the last few years, Arizona's always given it up to tight ends. And with all the San Francisco injuries, makes sense that you could get Kittle for pretty low ownership, I think, with people going down to more value. But yeah, those are the guys that I'm kind of eyeing on right now.
And I mean, the price on Ertz just screams like, because like everyone's going to want Kittle. Like your initial, if you're building by hand, your initial thing is going to be like, okay, can I fit George Kittle? Because against this Arizona matchup, and then you're going to say, oh no, I can't. Well, Ertz is 5,800, and he's almost like George Kittle. So I think he'll get a lot. He'll be really popular. Goddard, I know Tambo and I said we both like. It just, you know. I mean, they run these two tight end sets pretty much all game, and you know, with their lack of healthy receiving options, Goddard has to be in the mix as a weapon for Wentz, and he often gets overlooked because of Ertz. So
something that I need to research is how many games that Goddard and Ertz played together last year. I know they were kind of Goddard was basically healthy the whole year, and then Ertz was in and out. Obviously, all the wide receivers. But I feel like in the playoffs, they played a little bit together, maybe not. I don't know. That's something that I'm going to have to research. But I was really strong on the way Goddard looked at the end of last year. So if he's going to be out there for full snaps in 12 tight end sets, I mean, that price tag of 4,100 is ridiculous. So.
Yeah, Hawkinson makes a lot of sense. I don't know if we can guarantee that he'll be the second option in this offense, because like every year last season we thought Hawkinson was going to be utilized a lot more than he was. Sure. But you know, all the coach speak says that he had a great offseason, and even though he's still not quite 100% with his ankle, they said, but throughout the offseason, but he's supposed to be heavy utilized this season.
So funny. Like I read like a report right before where he personally said, I feel like I'm 100% before I went on the pod. So I don't like, I'd rather hear that from a player than, you know, when you don't hear anything and you're trying to judge like a beat reporter, but like when a guy says, I feel 100% back to health, like I'm just going to go with that. So
Hunter Henry, anyone?
Yeah. I liked him a little bit more. Like I said, when I was able to do some stuff with Tyrod, I'm not going to shy completely away from it just because the center situation. That's one that I've, one of my DFS lessons in the past has been, the O-line, centers, all that stuff matters so much in this game that, people just overlook it. And even Vegas, sometimes as far as a betting standpoint goes, they don't adapt the line quickly enough when they see, a couple O-linemen are down. We get that news late Saturday. They don't adjust. And normally those running backs are like the cheaper owned, the lesser owned cheap options that sometimes go off in the games. So, back to tight end with Hunter Henry, I've got some interest still there in him. I think he's a play. You talked about Hawkinson. I'm with you there. I'm not really worried about, and I like what you just said, Brett. I'm glad he's saying that about himself versus a coach who sort of has to protect his players. When a player's saying it, it's, normally dead on. They're saying not only for themselves, but they want their coaches and teammates to hear that so they know that they can be counted on. So I like that. And there's no guarantee, but he's going to be a great leverage play when you think everyone's going to go with Marvin Jones. And even as these other, Marvin Halls and Cephas plays get talked up, he's a great option, I think, there at 4,200.
He might end up the chalk by Sunday.
It could. Yeah, I think you're right. That could definitely happen. I see that. I'm still with you on Goddard. Like you said, I like that play. And then one other guy I want to bring up, maybe get your guys' thoughts so you can, just bash it completely. Actually, got a really ugly one after this, but I was going to say Eifert is interesting to me at 3,300. Nobody's going to really be on him. He fits with my Minshew stacks. If you want to put, Minshew, Chark and Eifert with a guy like Mac, and you just say, look, Mac's going to come out and pound the rock 20 times, score 2 touchdowns, and they're going to go to work on the other way. You can use him in there as a super cheap stack option if you think that game could get there. The absolutely most disgusting play ever that I want to talk about just for 2 seconds, and you guys can bash it, is O.J. Howard, because you know what we just saw with David Johnson last night. This is going to be the exact same scenario. I'm predicting this right now. If you got Kamara or you do get up to Thomas or whatever you decide in a secondary stack, nobody's going to have them with O.J. Howard. People maybe go Gronk just because they think about the Tom Brady connection, but you know this is when O.J. Howard's going to pop and score at least a touchdown, if not more, just to troll the whole world that tried it for every single week last year that he was in a game.
I like it. I mean, Brady loves the tight end, obviously, and I don't think that – I feel like they're going to – like Gronk is not going to be heavily utilized all throughout the season.
Gronk's going to be a blocker.
I mean, he's –
Yeah, that's my thoughts, yes.
And we'll see, and then they'll have their plan for him when the games really matter, but like I don't see them leaning heavily on him in week 1 whatsoever. And Howard is athletic, right? Like hopefully he can have a good game and come out the gates good to start the season. So I can get behind that. Eifert, I mean, that's just scary as hell, but that's like a Millie Maker play to win. And I can see that too. There was a lot of good hype about him. And nobody wants to play him, especially because like he's not even like as the number 1 tight end on the depth chart, but like those depth charts mean nothing. And all the coach speak was about Eifert, and they paid him, a decent amount of money. And he's definitely got a red zone equity. So I like that. Yeah, that's it.
The only other guy that I'd want to hear a take on is maybe Hayden Hurst. Hurst obviously stepping in a role that Atlanta used their tight end a ton last year with Hooper. If he steps into that role, we know he's got talent. He's a first-round pick. Now gets to up his snap rates in Atlanta in a passing offense. This could be a spot where you might need to get in early because he's at 4,300. I do like him in stacks. I don't know how often I'll have him outside of those stacks, but do you guys have a lean one way or the other with Hayden Hurst?
We like him.
Yeah, I like him in what you just said, though, Brett. I kind of like him in those little mini, like I said, a Carson Hurst would be better for me when I think most people are going to use Hurst in game stacks, or you even talked about that game and how stackable it is. I agree. That's where I'm going to try and get a little bit different because I think he's just a natural fit into those 3-1, 3-2 builds where I can just use him as a one-off. I think it's a great play at 4,300, but there's so many tight ends you can use. And that's another thing. I'm going to disperse these guys, and we don't talk about defense on here, but like defense and tight end typically are where I'm just going to go and let the optimizer, or if I'm doing them by hand, even just mix and match and go around the way a little bit that way.
Yep.
All right. That's a wrap. We hit on stack. Should we say our favorite stack?
Yeah, we can do that.
Favorite stack. I already know Tambo's is Jacksonville. He's already planted his flag.
Too many guys I like on this Minshew stack, man. I got to roll. It looks good.
You're going to have like a 5-man Minshew stack. Run it. Your whole lineup's going to be
Thompson, Eifert, Chark, bring it back with Hilton. Might do the whole game stack there. Mac, Hilton,
and then
Paris,
you're just going to have Michael.
Whatever.
Then you're just going to have Michael Thomas and CMC.
There you go.
To go along with it.
I'm going to try and build it
because you can fit them all.
Yeah.
What's another favorite stack?
Yeah, I'll just throw out one that I didn't really talk about, but it'll be in the Oakland Carolina game. So staying away from Christian McCaffrey and buying the passing game. Like I said, this is a totally new situation, new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback. Just buying DJ Moore with Ian Thomas and then bringing it back with one of the Oakland rookie wide receivers, I think, is a great way to start a build.
And you're going to use Teddy you're talking about?
Yeah, with Teddy.
Yeah, of course. We didn't really talk about him a lot earlier, so I was making sure you were saying that, not Derek Carr the other way. So, okay. I don't hate that. One last nugget. One last nugget, though. I forgot to mention this one. I wanted to talk about it was Cam Newton to Damiere Byrd, his boy from Carolina. Don't forget. And that's a super interesting Millie Maker one. If you're putting together some Cam Newton stacks, Damiere Byrd is a good little guy to put in there with them as a cheap play that nobody's going to be on.
I like that. I'll have to do it since I'm here in New England. All right. I mean, I already planted my flag with Deshaun Jackson, Carson Wentz. It's going to be chalk. I don't care because my non-chalk stack for sure is going to be Josh Allen. And you can even do Josh Allen with Diggs and John Brown. All of them. You're
gonna get tough.
It's gonna happen. You're gonna just have to hope for some Jets points. You're gonna have to run it back with your favorite Jets, which is probably gonna have to be Jameson Crowder. Maybe, Le'Veon can't do anything, but
you're gonna get that stack for 0.01%.
Yeah, and that's what it takes, my friend. That's what it takes to get to the top. I haven't been there, but maybe this week of the Miller Maker. But that's a wrap. This has been week 1 of the RG DFS Tournament Takes podcast, and we will check you again next week. Thank you.
See you guys.
Is
that it? That's it.
Still says recording on my end.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, they're going to have to snip the beginning and the end anyway, so just tell them that when you send it over.